Hi, we're here somewhere in Brooklyn, New York. We're here to talk to Aaron Roy. Aaron's the head of strategy and operations for a new company called 3dprinterOS. Essentially, they're providing the operating system that enables 3D printers to work together and for us to be able to use them in a more efficient manner. It's a really interesting concept, a great company. I think you'll enjoy hearing from Aaron. Well, Aaron, thank you for sitting down with us today.
My pleasure.
Great. Could you tell us a bit about how you got interested in 3D printing?
I had the chance to see a 3D printer in action. It was about 3 to 4 years ago. I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I feel like I stared at it for about 45 minutes trying to wrap my head around the fact that a physical object was being created out of thin air. And from there, I just dived in head first. The first thing I did was I read Fabricated by Hod Lipson and Melba Kerman, I think. It absolutely got me on this path of thinking I couldn't get out of. It was, just absolutely set into wanting to explore additive manufacturing. Another thing I then discovered was Makers by Chris Anderson. Back to back, those books put me in a spot where 3D printing, I had to get my hands on it. So actually what I did is I started volunteering like crazy. I volunteered with the 3D Print Show, with Maker Faire in New York, and with a Fab Lab in Newport, Rhode Island, Fab Lab Newport. This gave me the chance to actually touch machines, to get hands-on experience with some different types of 3D printers, and I've never looked back since. At 3dprinterOS, what we've done is we've built the world's first operating system for 3D printing. Operating system is a very vague word in so many ways. 3D printing right now, there's hundreds of different machines. All of them have very machine-specific, very fragmented, very complicated workflows. For a school or an enterprise to bring in 3D printing and have to relearn or reteach admins a workflow every single time, it's just very difficult and very frustrating. We really set out to unify those different things, put a platform together that can connect across different systems, and not only that, deliver better results than maybe a machine-specific hardware. By focusing only on software, we've been able to explore a lot of the problems that plagued the 3D printing workflow in general. And what we've realized is a lot of groups in today's world actually have 3D printers. But what to do with those, the training that goes into using them, the ability to track statistics, measure ROI on a 3D printing investment, and share that access, it wasn't really there. So we've really focused on providing whole solutions, asking what are the problems of a business, and then trying to solve those. A really big thing for us is working with different educational institutions. We've realized schools might have printers, but maybe 5 or 10 students had access to 2 printers. To us, that was really frustrating because they have these great machines, but no one's using them. We built our software to kind of flip-flop that, where we could take 2 machines, share those to 20 users, 100 users, 1,000 users, an infinite amount, and put data behind it. For an admin to be able to say, we had 2,000 hours of printing across 100 different machines over the past 3 months, puts them in a position where they can really grow their program. On the enterprise side, we've really been able to grow our software around clients such as Jabil Circuit. They're the 3rd largest contract manufacturer in the world, over $18 billion in revenue per year. We were able to go in there, work with their engineers who had 5 $1 million machines, but really only 5 to 10 people using them. And instead bring in desktop FDM machines and be able to get 18 or 20 or 50 engineers with access. Because at the end of the day, more utilization means faster prototyping and more measurable results. We've seen 3D printing being used differently than maybe we did 2 years ago. Where before it was pure prototyping, we're seeing now with material science advances, attempts at attacking real large problems. One thing that I know a lot of groups are working on is the access to materials such as PEEK, in materials that can be really disruptive manufacturing-wise, not just prototype materials. PEEK has similar tensile properties to a material such as aluminum. This, as it becomes more prevalent in the desktop 3D printing world, we think can really change the way that 3D printers are used in an enterprise or an education or even a desktop realm. Because one of the biggest complaints we sometimes hear is, well, you can only make things in plastic. As desktop 3D printing can move into other types of materials, that changes. Even a year ago today, printing in blended PLAs, you know, the coppers, the brass fills, the gold fills, the bamboo fills. That wasn't here. You know, that wasn't really a possibility. In a year from today, I'm really intrigued to see where the materials are again. Those advances push the whole industry forward. So 3D Printer OS, one of the biggest areas of focus for us as well is education. You know, we've had the chance to work with some of the leading institutions in the US and, you know, around the world on how they're using 3D printing. One of those in particular, Duke University, has really focused on enabling access beyond your standard groups. So instead of focusing on just engineers or just designers, they've tried to open up 3D printing to a broader swath of their student body. This is allowing people to not just, you know, work in 3D, but to start thinking in 3D, which as a shift in mindset really allows the industry to be more widely adopted. You know, 500 students who've had exposure to 3D printing is a lot different than just 10 engineering students. Thinking how we could design for additive manufacturing is a completely different mindset in some ways than subtractive. With 3D printing, we're adding from the ground up. We can build innovative shapes and curves and objects. It's a whole different way of design thought, and the more people who think that way, the more innovation, the more cutting edge breakthroughs we'll see in this field. The 3D printing ecosystem today is, I would describe it in some ways as like a holy trinity. You know, we have material research and science, and we have hardware research and science, and then we have software, you know, hopefully tying these different pieces together. That ecosystem, at some points we see limitations because, you know, as hardware needs to advance, it also needs software to unleash that power. And as far as we can push on the hardware and software side, we need great materials to really complete that picture. I was reading just before you guys got here today about you know, full color 3D printing and what would that take on an FDM printer. And I'm really interested to see, you know, what groups like E3D and what material scientists can do to crack those type of problems. At the same point, you know, for standard desktop 3D printing, we still have a lot of work to do in regards to making sure printers all have Wi-Fi and making sure printers are reliable, that they're user-friendly, they're easy to use. And on the software side, you know, the problems we're working on tackling are, how can we make slicing better? How can we be more predictable in print times? How can we make networking printers together and making them easy for large groups to access simpler and put data really behind that? From a year ago to today, the advances that have been made on all three fronts have been incredible. Heading into 2016, the advances that will be made, I think, will only be multiplied because we all know so much more. A fourth problem that's part of the ecosystem that also needs to be tackled and I know is being addressed is design. You know, the access to great design content, 3D printable content, but B, optimization of existing content. So many files that are created are not necessarily ready for 3D printing, and the tackling of that problem and making them more available and more accessible will also be able to push forward all three other fronts. In my dream world, in 5 years from today, you know, we'd see hardware be at a point where it's an easy workflow no matter what machine was adopted. We'd see it at a point where an enterprise can bring in, hopefully, 3D printing the same way they approach a modern PC. It's something that's a tool in the belt of the manufacturing workflow. Same thing in education. You know, 3D printing can be something that is taught with regularity, not something that's an elective we look at with like interest and intrigue. 3D printing should be part of the regular conversation because its potential to upset, you know, the $12 trillion manufacturing is very real. So in 5 years, I do see it making real progress on those fronts. Same thing from a material side. You know, I think in 5 years, I think in 1 year, we'll see advances in materials that we never even thought possible. Whether that's the printing of metal on desktop in a safe and efficient manner, or it's the breakthrough in new materials that can be 3D printed that weren't possible through some other manufacturing method that can be used in a desktop environment to change the way we approach manufacturing. And from a software side, you know, there's work to be done. But I think as the computing power inside the machines gets better, we can build better software, better firmware that, you know, it unleashes even more of that power. With every year, the passing of time, we all understand these machines more. We understand how to highlight their what complements them, and we know how to minimize what some of the troublesome issues are. I think it's on for all three fronts to really grow. In the design optimization side to grow as well. It requires all of us within the industry to continue doing a lot of market research and understand the pains that currently exist, and then to position ourselves for 5 years from now to be successful. It took a while for PCs to make it in every home. I think there is a lot of work that would have to be done on the design optimization side to get a 3D printer in every home, because even if the machine was easy to use, even if the software was super simple, even if the materials were incredible, we have to have great content. I think teaching the ability to make great content, unlocking the access to great content we have available today, that's another issue in itself. So I hope in 10 years I feel much more optimistic about that possibility. If I were to recommend to someone just starting out in 3D printing where they should begin that journey, I would start with, first off, get in front of it. 3D printing, it's like seeing is believing. Find a class, find a meetup, find a fab lab, find anything you can to put yourself in front of a printer. You have to see it to really to appreciate its power. Number two, look on the great resources online. Obviously, the Coursera's, the different components, there's a lot of resources becoming available online on the topic. Number three, I'm biased, but I will pitch that Hod Lipson, Melba Kerman book. It's a little older now, but Fabricated really, for me, highlighted the potential of the industry. And besides that, go to the conferences, go to the shows. There's a lot of ones that have free admission. Seeing this stuff in action, meeting the people in it, it's still a really small industry. You could join today, you could join a year from today and really make a huge difference in 3D printing. This is a ground level industry. You can make a monstrous difference with your ideas, even today.
So at the beginning of the revolution?
I think we are in the very beginning of the revolution. I think we need more people within it. I think we need great minds in it, and I think we need people who really want to tackle and take on and solve some of these larger scale issues. For an industry that's poised to take off, there are few and far between where you see the ground level and can reach out and touch it. This is that industry. The manufacturing industry is a $12 trillion market in really 3D printing. The ability to take 1 pound in and put 1 pound out, only use what material is there and create from that. It has such unlimited disruptive potential. I would say, please join us.
I agree.
Please visit us at 3dprinteros.com. There's a wealth of information and resources on what we're doing, some of our goals and initiatives for this year out there. We also teach classes in New York in person. More information can be found on our website or also at learn3d.nyc. That's a free class where in New York we try to teach at Brooklyn Public Library. Again, put the printers in front of people. Let them see it, let them interact. And we also do webinars. Same thing on that same site. So feel free to join us on a free webinar as well on 3D printing.